Not so long ago, in the 1950s, the average literacy rate in the world was 35%, meaning that in a group of 10, 6 people didn't know how to read and write. However, 50 years later, the literacy rate went to 90%, leaving only 1 person in a group of 10 without reading and writing skills. The key to this lightning speed growth can be found basically in every house. Nope, it's not the internet. The internet, on the contrary, can reportedly make us dumber in no time. The key to worldwide literacy is this BIC pen you've definitely held in your hands at least once in your life. Fun fact, this trusty pen has been outselling iconic items like the Rubik's Cube and even the iPhone since the 1950s. Each second, 57 BIC pens are sold, while it's 590 iPhones a minute, meaning it's just around 10 devices a second. Every single day, BIC sells 14 million of their nifty pens. Despite its popularity, it's often overlooked. It hasn't become a generic term like Xerox or Kleenex. When you flick a BIC, you're actually using a lighter, not just another writing utensil. Back in the day, people used feathers and ink to write. Fountain pens were a game changer, but they were pricey and prone to leaking. Thanks to American inventor John Loud, the first ballpoint pen was born in 1888. However, it wasn't until Hungarian creator Laszlo Biro stepped in with oil-based ink that the ballpoint pen we know and love today really took off. He came up with a genius design that would smoothly pull ink onto the ball without any fancy moving parts. That pen could consistently give you a nice, clean line on paper. But his pens were crazy expensive, like $190 in today's money kind of expensive. No wonder they weren't flying off the shelves. See, back then, only about a third of people could even read and write, so pens were more of a luxury item than a necessity. And even though Biro had a great design, he couldn't crack the mass market. French businessman Marcel BIC saw the potential in Biro's pen and bought the rights, leading to the birth of the iconic BIC Cristal in 1950. With precision steel balls and affordable pricing, the BIC Cristal became a must-have for writers everywhere. But even so, despite BIC pens defeating illiteracy and stuff, there's another simple invention that may have been even more significant. Surprisingly, it's the shipping container. You may not have heard of Malcolm McLean, but this guy invented a standardized steel container that could be stacked on ships, trains, and trucks. In 1937, McLean had this genius idea, but it took until 1966 for international container shipping to really take off. There were many crucial events, and the need for quick and efficient transportation of supplies skyrocketed. By the end of the 1960s, McLean had made $160 million from his container empire. This invention didn't just save money, it saved time and labor too. Before containers, everything had to be loaded and unloaded by hand. Now, thanks to McLean's invention, it's all seamless and automated. According to specialists, the impact of containers on our lives is huge. They made the world smaller and economies bigger. Thanks to them, you pay less for everyday products. Let's say you're in the US and you need something imported from Italy. Air shipping is still ridiculously expensive, so we don't even take it into consideration. Now, imagine a ship can only transport 5 containers, each of them having 20 products inside. In total, 100 products. Let's say such shipping would cost $100, which would add at least $1 to the final price of your product, depending on how greedy the distributors are. But if you can stack the containers, you can add a second and even a third row of them, which will reduce the price. You still pay for the ship. It's the same $100, but you transport 200 or even 300 products if you can stack. Now, this is an imaginary and a bit far-fetched example, but you get the drift. Why are the containers so significant? Well, those famous BIC pens that defeated illiteracy were supposed to be delivered all over the world somehow, weren't they? And it's not only about the pens. Since we live in the era of globalization, we heavily rely on fast and affordable transportation for food, clothing, and even sponges. Meet Aaron Kraus, the genius behind the smiley-faced wonder that is Scrub Daddy, the kitchen sponge that went viral on TikTok. Aaron went from polishing cars with a fancy buffing pad to creating a revolutionary cleaning sponge. His parents, both doctors, weren't too thrilled when he ditched the idea of a car washing business to pursue his sponge dreams. So, one day, Aaron was cleaning cars and he ended up damaging the outside. But instead of crying over spilled milk, he created a line of buffing and polishing pads. 3M thought it was so cool that they bought his company in August 2008. But they didn't want the sponges Aaron had made, so those were just collecting dust in his factory. 5 years later, Aaron was scrubbing his dishes with those leftover sponges. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in his head. He had $1 million idea in his hands. And just like that, Scrub Daddy Inc. was born in 2012 with some grassroots marketing. Then, on an episode of Shark Tank in October 2012, not everyone believed in his idea. But Lori Greiner swooped in and made a deal with Aaron for a 20% stake in his company for $200,000. The next day, they sold a whopping 42,000 sponges in under 7 minutes on QVC. By the way, this beats BIC records of 57 pens per second. That day, Scrub Daddies were sold at a speed of 100 sponges a second. Aaron definitely sells heaps of sponges, but in terms of quantity, it's hard to compete with humble batteries. Just in the US alone, people buy around 3 billion of them each year. By the way, they've been around for longer than you may think. The very first example of a battery, if you let me say so, was found somewhere around Mesopotamia, and scientists call it the Baghdad Battery. It was a terracotta pot, about 6 inches tall with a 1.5-inch opening. Inside there was a copper cylinder holding an iron rod, all snug as a bug in a rug. The top of the rod was separated from the copper with some bitumen and stoppers, so no accidental mixing could happen there. No one knows exactly what it was for, but there are numerous ideas about its purpose. From electroplating, meaning putting a layer of one metal like gold onto the surface of another, to storing sacred manuscripts, or even pickling veggies. But the real deal started in 1749, when the legendary Benjamin Franklin started experimenting with electricity and called his set of capacitors a battery, because they worked together like a military unit. Half a century later, in 1800, Italian physicist Alessandro Volta came up with the first electrochemical battery known as the voltaic pile. This stack of copper and zinc plates would produce a steady current, although Volta thought it was an endless source of energy. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Those batteries couldn't be used to power anything. But thanks to them, we got on the road to portable power. Alessandro Volta's battery was like the hot new gadget that totally revolutionized the way scientists worked with electricity. By the mid-1800s, the first rechargeable batteries were born, and a dry cell with liquid electrolyte was invented to make batteries more practical. Nowadays, we've got rechargeable lithium-ion batteries powering everything from players and toys to smartwatches. So, why are they some of the most successful inventions of all time? Well, they're the reason we have electric motors in e-vehicles and machines. Thanks to batteries, we have lighting all around us. And can you imagine not having battery storage for our telecommunication devices? It would be a whole different world.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.